Good day, good people. I'm Dr. Johnny Pierce, but you can just call me Johnny, and this is the Actually Well podcast. I'm continuing my series of talking with gentlemen who are in and around the field of wellness, and today I'm with
Ipninder Singh.
Thank you, Ipninder, for bringing yourself to your rooftop. This place is beautiful. Letting me come and sit on it as well and give me the opportunity to talk with you. So what do you do?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for doing this. Thanks for coming on down. Happy to do this. I recently graduated therapist. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes.
We need more help in the field.
Yeah, I just applied for my DC license, graduate license, and I'll be applying for Maryland as well. But I've also been a life coach for about over 4 or 5 years now. I started a coaching business in COVID for South Asians, dealing with identity issues, religious trauma, family issues, what it's like being a child of immigrants and that unique experience. South Asians are not as well represented in the mental health field as other communities, although that is changing. And so I focus on that. I also focus on psychedelic coaching. So the idea that, especially with psychedelics and the research of psychedelics being really popular right now, really understanding the indigenous practice and looking at it from a decolonizing lens, as well as offering accessibility to those who, where this practice comes from, who are basically clients of color, who might have a spiritual practice or indigenous root, or connected to a culture where they can benefit from this medicine. So I try to offer kind of that alternate space compared to really white dominated spaces in psychedelics. And with therapy, I am specialized as a certified rehabilitation counselor as well, which is specialized in disabilities. So I work on anti-ableism, empowerment counseling, and a holistic approach that's really addressing the needs and empowering clients as well. Yeah.
So, hey, thank you for sharing that. Obviously, there's a lot to unpack there. You mentioned decolonizing work, which is a very popular topic these days, especially from people of color. I think it's been pretty clear to people for some time now that although a lot of the theory that is out there is got these roots to go back to many, many moons ago. I mean, decades ago, different people were doing the work, different people were doing the research. Now that it's expanded, there's been some awareness that, hey, maybe some of this language that's used and some of this perspective that's being used is not terribly helpful for everybody who's trying to use the service.
Yeah.
What, if anything, about decolonizing work have you found to be like most useful to you thinking about the services you plan on providing?
Yeah, I think it gives me language to understand my own experience first and foremost. Even if, for example, in school, we learn about many counseling theories, and mostly all of them, if not all, come from these European white, Swiss or other European psychologists from, 100 years ago or from the 50s. And, it felt like, okay, technically I understand the approach on the human psyche and kind of like applying some of those techniques or the concepts to a universal human experience. However, it also felt like there's something lacking here. And when I look closer and you kind of scrutinize even the pedagogy, the academic process, I noticed some things were missing. Like, where are the other voices?
Yeah.
Like,
did they even exist?
Frantz Fanon did.
Nice.
And he was a prominent Black psychologist in the 50s, or don't quote me, I think 50s, 60s. And he did a lot of work that we talk about today, even about the difference between the Black experience and the white experience, and how or not just how Black people are perceived, but I borrow that and talk about, well, how people of color are perceived in America, and that difference. And so that conversation is missing. So it helped me understand, okay, how do we decolonize? How do we, examine this? So that word itself, I think is so useful. Now it's also used, ironically, as a trending word. And so, like many things, like kind of a decolonizing lens would say, well, systems that are rooted in colonization will take any kind of words or a movement and kind of want to take it under its own umbrella. And that's the problem itself. So the irony is that even decolonizing itself is trying to be taken under kind of a umbrella that is rooted in, more of a white pedagogy.
Reminds me of the word woke.
I was just thinking about that too. Woke is a term that is, you're awakened to the world around you. It comes from the Black community, and now it's politicized and kind of used in almost this
derogatory way.
And so, that doesn't change the work that's being done, but it attempts to undermine it. So, and a little bit ago, we're expanding on this and looking at how things are appropriated. We talked about yoga, for example, or spiritual concepts in psychedelics that come from different communities and that are kind of like siloed in a way that, if you have this experience, then you experience ego death or you experience this spiritual awakening. But, my Sikh tradition and many other traditions talk about similar or same concepts for many centuries. The indigenous communities where psychedelics come from, there's much more to those communities than just, there's a ceremony in psychedelics. So I think decolonizing also kind of fights back against the extraction as well. And so it also examines the history of why we're here, how we got here, and what we can do to liberate from it.
Love that. In many of the interviews that I've done, I was able to do a lot of interviews with ladies. One of the ladies was actually the person who introduced me to you.
Yeah.
Yes, Supreet. Shout out. Thank you again for. We are at the art exhibit that she put together in DC.
Which is amazing.
And she's like, you should talk to him. And I was like, you know what? I should talk to him. And then we had a brief conversation. It was very clear. Like, listen, man, I'm not doing the interviews with the guys yet, but when I get to do the interviews with the guys, I gotta have you. I love bringing in multiple perspectives on this. Like, it is Men's Mental Health Month, and we do want to talk about men's mental health in general. But I think we have to bring culture into the conversation as well, because not all men are walking through the world in the same way.
Yeah.
And when we ignore that part of it, we also are ignoring that guy's maleness. We are ignoring that guy's struggles that he might have to deal with, because if you go into a world where everybody looks like you, then yes, maybe the things that have to do with you being a male do get amplified. But if you are operating in a world where you're the brownest man in the room, you're the man with the biggest beautiful beard in the room. Told you I was going to get it in there. You thought I was joking, but I totally got that in there. Yes, in all seriousness, like that's a different aspect of being a guy, of being a man, and how it impacts your mental health.
Right. And I, with even the art exhibit where we met at, even Supreet creating that was a big deal to have Punjabi representation in the DC area.
Right.
And one of the most striking works, the art pieces there, was this beautiful, colorful map of Punjab, united map of Punjab, which is the pre-partition version of Punjab. Punjab means 5 waters or 5 rivers, and it's a land that is defined by those geographical boundaries and been its own unique culture, and we are of that ethnic background that has existed for many, 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 many centuries.
Right.
And, the Sikh tradition comes out of that in the late 1400s, early 1500s, and kind of advances a lot of the cultural poetry and the works of Sufis and others that were there by this founder, Guru Nanak. And there's these spiritual traditions that come out of that land. And that's going a little bit into the theological and spiritual, which has its own place, but just going back to the cultural experience, we're a people that have been together in these shared experiences for so long. And then with this history, there's a long history, and then the land gets cut in half, right, in 1947 because of colonization, right? And so to see the map at this art exhibit that predates that represents a united map, it was is so significant. That itself is, in a way, a decolonizing act, because
because it's like, this is where we actually come from.
this is
how
who we
this
are.
is what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, there's a fence dividing it. There's one, East Punjab is absorbed by India, West Punjab is absorbed by Pakistan, and then supplanted on top of that sometimes as an idea of nationalism. Oh, you're now Indian, or you're now Pakistani. Well, for Punjabis, you know, that's not always going to translate. I mean, especially if you look back to how we were before, we're one people together, and you had like this forced migration that happened, where people have ancestral homes in the other side and have not been able to go back. So that's a deep-rooted colonized experience, and what happens with the generations since then, and what happens to our mental health since then.
Exactly.
Right? So bringing it back to this art exhibit, to see the united map that this artist had done with the grains of Punjab. She created a map with like little grains.
I remember that.
It was gorgeous. And it speaks volumes when you are able to understand that. And so from that, you could then have a conversation. Now speaking to Punjabi men, right? Who we are, how layered our culture is. It's not just something that we're taught in a kind of monolithic way of, you know, getting too much into just machismo, or just or taking concepts that are oversimplified of just keep climbing. You know, we have Chardikala, which is high spirits, keep climbing, and it's wonderful and such a great strength, but it's in context with, hey, even working on yourself and going through difficult processes is still Chardikala, is still climbing. If it includes being in your community, going to therapy, working on yourself, but giving yourself a lot of grace, understanding the environment that impacts you.
Right.
And then on top of that, then that translates into other communities with other men experiencing, you know, different but very similar things. So that's how I like to look at it.
Well, you're tying knots together for me. This interview is you're interviewing yourself, man, because my next question has to do with your own mental wellness journey. And what, if any, things you would want to share or highlight that you know that you've done to be well?
I think like one of the biggest reasons to be in this field is because I've been a client and gotten help when I needed from therapists that were really great. And my current therapist is a Black decolonizing therapist who's amazing, And I started off struggling through medical school. Actually, I went to the Caribbean for medical school, and I struggled through that whole journey. And it wasn't till years later, through like, you know, I'd done different jobs in healthcare, and it wasn't until years later till I received a dyslexia diagnosis that explained that, you know, that why I was struggling in school for so long.
Right.
And again, bringing in culture, not all of us growing up have the language to what even a learning disability is, and how you can get accommodations and a diagnosis that help you, and the therapists that help you around that to then succeed in an environment.
And how many people can actually trust that that's not being utilized as a resource to kind of put you to the side, that this is a genuine diagnosis, that this is somebody who's done the work properly to actually represent what my challenges might be?
And that's absolutely valid, because you have a resistance from many communities. Well, these diagnoses and therapies, they seem like they're for white people, or they seem that they're done by white people, and
or they're biased,
and they don't apply to us. And that the unfortunate, or whatever you want to call it, truth is, a lot of that is valid from a history. And that's why it's important to have people like us in the field for also people like us,
right,
or are related enough to have a shared experience.
Being in a room sometimes is really crucial, because, you know, whether it's a business or it's a field or whatever, when you don't have people from various backgrounds to look over the idea before the idea goes out, things are where the errors come up. I think that's where the questions don't get asked until it's too late, because how many times have we seen it where, you know, even if you think about marketing, we've seen commercials that just did not land well with large segments of the population, because it's like, wait a minute now, what's the undertone here? You know, what are you really saying? And if you had more diversity in the room before that even gets let out, those questions might get asked then, and therefore adjustments get made before it even reaches the masses.
It's very, very true. The subtleties of that's the experience of how you grow up. If you grow up in the U.S. and you take in all the subtleties, what do you internalize?
Right.
If you're non-white and you see that if you're looking at the world around you and the people who get success, who are valued, who are deemed, attractive or this or that,
it gets layered. It gets layered real fast there.
What happens to you as a human being, right? We all are part of one humanity, and what does that lived experience look like? And now I know I'm referencing a little bit of schoolwork because I just got out of school, but
still fresh in the brain.
But in multicultural class, you have Sue and Sue.
Oh my God, Sue and Sue! How many times have I read Sue and Sue material and thought, this obviously isn't for a therapist of color. This is not being written for a therapist of color to work with people of color or even white people. This is written for people who are expected to be white that are delivering service to people who are people of color. You're talking about generalization, but you don't want to generalize. But in general, it's just like, y'all tap dancing.
It's like they're trying to do an intro enough into the balancing that, and there's a couple nuggets, but overall, it could do a lot more. There wasn't any information on South Asians, but I would talk in class about that. And, they did touch upon internalized racism a bit, or what it means to challenge your white privilege and the steps that one can go through to be empowered from that. But at the same time, these are just scratching the surface of, it's a conversation that's just beginning, but it's catered towards the 85%, I think, of this field that is composed of white, therapists and psychologists. But the conversations need to go forward. Right. And the nuance is doable. Right. It's not something that we have to feel overwhelmed into. If we do, we can step back. We're here to talk about these experiences, to unpack them. How many people out there might already relate to some of this, with feeling isolated, figuring out their identity, feeling kind of a little bit fractured between, my family, or whether they're immigrants, and then you want to, you love your family, but you also want your autonomy and all that. And so many times I've heard that, when they go to a therapist, not all white therapists, but enough, will use tactics like boundaries in a very kind of sanitized way that's definitive. And that doesn't translate to a lot of our communities, because they need to be empowered in a way and find that balance, right? So
you about to get me in trouble. So here's my I'm gonna keep this as brief as I can, because these interviews ain't supposed to take forever. I actually made 15 to 30 minutes. So I gotta be mindful of that.
Man,
so boundaries. Boundaries is a buzzword that on the Insights and Actions podcast, which I do with my colleagues over at Insight and Action Therapy, we've talked about. And my biggest issue with the term boundaries and how it's used is that boundaries were always, in every context in which they were initially talked about, meant to be internalized.
Yep.
I am putting boundaries around myself so that I am managing myself.
100%. Yeah.
And it is not other people's responsibility to adjust or change or shift around to fit me in. You know, if I don't want to be available after 6 o'clock in the evening because I want to focus on my family, I'm the one responsible for putting my phone on Do Not Disturb.
Yeah.
I'm not responsible for broadcasting that and then telling people not to call me. Yeah. Because that makes the energy and action go on them. 100%. They are responsible for doing things for me so that I can achieve my said goal.
Yep.
And unfortunately, I think that this field in particular has keen awareness of this.
Yeah.
I think when people are sitting in offices doing therapy, they know full well that that is the origin point of boundaries.
Yep.
But I think on social media, where you don't necessarily have to have the credentials sometimes, you don't necessarily have to have background sometimes, but you could hear the word. Yeah. And now, okay, that's the word that everybody's talking about.
Let me just go off on that.
This, to me, it makes sense that boundaries would be that you put them out around you and you make other people adhere to it.
Yeah.
So let me talk about it that way, cutting people off and doing this other stuff, which in a collectivist society, it's not going to work
Yeah.
Because no, I'm not going to cut people off because that was never the way this was meant to be in the first place.
I think that's the thing. If you were in an environment,
right.
Look at your environment. You know, I tell all my clients to, like, whatever you're experiencing, at least 50% of it is the environment. At least, right? So the environment we're in, if you were practicing therapy in a colonized lens, boundaries are something to then have very tangible in this way that is actually isolating or hyper individualized.
Oh my God.
And we're literally talking about boundaries of partition of Punjab and many other parts of the world. That playbook is done in colonization throughout the world, Latin America, Africa, look at Eritrea, right, in that area by the Italians, right? You look at many parts of Asia, so many places were colonized. Actually, we talk about places that weren't colonized, actually, Nepal, Ethiopia, and I don't know, many others. You know, we actually talk the inverse of what places weren't colonized. So there's literal boundaries of cutting things and countries and lands and people.
Yep.
Right?
And divide and conquer is a term for a reason.
And now if you take that forward a few hundred years and you're part of a space that is just the norm, and you're taking these concepts, how are you applying a term like boundaries? Right? So that's what you're talking about. And in community, in an egalitarian society, oh, I'm part of my community, the community is part of me. We are interacting with one another. What can I do to enhance the experience of the community by also enhancing myself? And that's the internal work of, oh, okay, like, I'm part of this just as much as someone else. What can we do to collaborate on this? What am I responsible for? And what is the environment giving me or not giving me that I need to interact with?
How do I take care of myself in such a way that I'm more available to take care of those around me?
Absolutely, yeah.
And, you know, some people, I think about selfishness as being on a spectrum. Most people think about selfishness being on a spectrum that also includes selflessness. So at one end, there's selflessness, and another end, there's selfishness. I would say these are actually two different spectrums, because there is a healthy degree of selfishness that I would call self-investment. And then there's an unhealthy degree of selflessness, which I would call exploitation.
Yeah, absolutely.
like these things are tied together, that you give of yourself so much, there's nothing of you left. Or you're so focused on yourself that you can't share any resources, knowledge, time, effort, energy in anybody else. Like, these things can be problematic. Both selflessness and selfishness can be problematic. And they also can be incredibly healthy, and they can be uniting, and they can help people advance.
That is you touched upon a big struggle that some might work through. I personally had to go through that. So in Sikh philosophy and Sikh teachings, and there's a big concept of seva, which is, and other communities have this too in this South Asian context, they use the word as well. It means roughly selfless service. So it's like, I grew up in a way where you're at the Gurdwara and you're, you know, passing out the food or helping clean or doing that, and they're like, oh, look at this person, he does so much seva. But that concept is also like what you're doing in your life, right? How are you helping others? But it can be exploited in a lens where, if people are adhering to a hyper-capitalism, you know, it can be looked at, oh, look at this person, they'll do whatever for me, they're gullible, they're this, they're that. But it comes from an egalitarian society, and then how it's applied in this environment can be exploitative or looked at something as less than, which is not. It's actually quite powerful, depending how it's used. I am beyond ego, going back to ego death that the white researchers talk about in psychedelics, right? Oh, ego death. Well, that concept has existed. There's already the ego death existing when you're internally driven and you're connected to the oneness that's also the philosophy, right? That's just what you do, right? And the community does that, and there are, you know, it's not just, you know, feeding people at gurudwaras, which is a big concept of the Sikh faith called langar, which is everyone sits down and shares a meal together to represent equality. Now, how people use that and apply it depending on their environment or what their concept is, how colonized or not they are, I guess I would argue, it changes, right? And what that impact has on the individual, though, in this environment, let's say in the U.S., that's really important. because you might connect to this concept and then have to work towards, oh, you better do great in school and get this really high paying job at the same time because your ranking needs to be higher. But then wait, aren't we part of a philosophy that's selfless service and feeding all? And that philosophy is outside the, it's not just you go to the Gurdwara and it exists there. It exists kind of in life, right? That's why I wear the identity, or some of us wear everyone has their reasons, but this is part of my identity, is like trying to represent this. It's an orientation of the belief system. It doesn't have to be perfect. No one has to be perfect. But yeah, I struggled with that. Oh, am I supposed to be so selfish or selfless? Or no, I need to be really selfish then and justify being selfish to succeed. And it really, a lot of it was the environment that I was in, right? We're not always in an egalitarian place.
No, we're not always in an egalitarian place. But like as I was saying a moment ago, man, you really are doing the interview yourself, because you just touched on identity. And I have purposely asked everybody about, who they are, because I want this to be a showcase. I want people to see these interviews and to be curious about the person that I'm interviewing and how they might connect with that person, how they might be able to, if they are seeking services, because obviously I can't see everybody. I'm not licensed everywhere. How they might connect with that person for that purpose. I've asked about that. I've asked about, what kind of mental health journey a person's gone on. And then I've also asked people about identity, because I think that identity is so crucial to touch on and talk about. We get shaped into the people that we are by many different forces. Yeah. And, as you talked, you've mentioned, hey, my faith has done some shaping of me. You mentioned academics. At one point in time, because I wasn't aware that I was dyslexic, I struggled in academics. But once I became aware of it, I was able to get the accommodations needed, and I started to succeed.
Yes. Yeah.
Not to say that one is greater than the other in terms of any one identity that we might possess, but how do you see yours maybe intersecting, or if there is one that kind of like shaped and formed you more so than others?
I think it's an ongoing process.
Beautiful.
It's been really understanding that self energy of who I am in relation to who I am with the universe, or part of kind of this existence and slice of time we're in, to get really like, I guess, that's looking at it at this very maybe flowery, universal lens, but really then the practicality of that.
Yeah.
Oh, who am I in the universe? What is this slice that I'm in? Reconciling the practicality of that with, so I gotta get up every day, make my coffee, figure out what I gotta do. How do I not be lonely? How do I, take care of my body? How do I do these things? So, but they're not oppositional,
right?
I think, and understanding that process, and I think identity is shaped through going through the process itself.
Right.
It's not necessarily something like, maybe early on we do kind of like look at something we want to model after and kind of throw our identity towards that, and that might get us going. But then along the way, we also have to reconcile with who we are and go through that. And I think that's been really instrumental, because when we look as identity as a reaction to an environment, it's not, it can be partially, but it's not fully you, right? Figuring out who you are, giving yourself a chance to explore that. I think I've been able to, with the help of therapists and others and community and family and many others and friends, being able to also do that together. And I think one of the things is it's okay that we don't always know. So like, with environment, I felt rejected in my community, and I love my community, right? And this is a shared experience, I think, through many immigrant communities, not just South Asians, many actually people of color, and there's an expectation of success, right?
Gotta have it.
And not being able to succeed as a doctor, right? Not exactly, received well, or you don't get that kind of glow or kind of status. They use the word status in the community. And that's funny, because we come from an egalitarian origin. So what colonization has done, that's another topic. And then I was also briefly married and divorced, which was devastating for me in COVID. And that's like hit number 2, right? Like, how are you looked at in the community? Oh, well, now you're not, you're kind of have this failed marriage, or to start this thing that's also valued in our communities as well. oh, do you have a good career, and are you marriageable, or have you successfully done that? That's a metric, unfortunately, used. And then, is my identity, if my identity is based on the reaction, then essentially my life was over.
Right.
Right. And so I had to contend with that in 2021 when, my marriage did end. It was a brief marriage, 6 months, but still very impactful for me.
Right.
And that I didn't have a choice other than checking myself into therapy. And with that process, with connecting back to my spiritual journey, that led to this openness of, wait, and the dyslexia diagnosis, oh, wow, I could do school. I could figure out, I do have a future.
Right.
I have to create the future. It's not just in reaction to environment.
The key. That is the key. I have to create it.
Yeah.
How many of us, and how many people do we know? How many people do we know through jobs, personal life, family? You pick whatever corner you want to in your social world. How many people do we know that sit around and wait for things to come to them?
I did it for many years. And I was lucky to have support, and I couldn't have done it alone. But there was a part of me, sure, that did kind of like, well, if I felt like my life is over, what am I going to do? Wither away the rest of my life? I didn't have a choice.
Got to wake up to the demand of life. Life demands movement.
Yeah. And so, there's that balance. And I think, so identity is a continual journey, figuring out who you are. And I think sometimes we react to perceptions of what others might think.
Oh, yeah.
And when we do that, you might lose parts of yourself. So really, and that's okay. That's part of the process, right? Like, and then really getting to a foundational sense of self and continue to work on that is important. People might look at my turban and beard and consider, oh, this is a religious person with 1, 2, 3 rules. Another person might be like, oh, dude, like, your people party and you guys are fun people because
I've actually learned about that from Supreet. She's saying y'all hype.
Yeah. And then someone else might be like, oh, you're not religious enough because you don't do this. Or someone might say something else, or someone may not even know what a Sikh is. Or I go to Canada and I'm just a dude because there's so much familiarity of this identity, and you just get to be a dude, and it's great because if they don't like you, it's just because of you, or they like
you don't have to wonder about the layers, right?
And so I think if you go off the environment, then your identity isn't just a chameleon, right? So then it can feel like that, and then we can feel lost. So then, I know
like imposter syndrome or something like that.
Imposter syndrome, and IFS talks about internal family systems, a type of therapeutic approach and concept, and work talks about is self energy.
Right.
We were bringing up the self energy, and that's one approach also to work on that. Yeah. So Beautiful. It's a constant. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's kind of how I look at identity as well, man. I feel like we're ever evolving. And I think our evolution is not a matter of picking up things as much as putting things down.
Mm-hmm.
We get here with whatever temperament that we have. We come here as souls, however we get here, whatever you believe. And you see it in if you've ever been around small children.
Mm-hmm.
The baby comes home from the hospital, and once the baby starts to blink a little bit more and act up a little bit more, you start to see, oh, there's a little spirit in there.
Yeah.
It's a little person in there. And it starts to come out, and we are revealing who we are every day we live. And then, there's a period of indoctrination that we all go through. Some of it is colonized. Some of it is from our culture. Some of it is from our television shows and our media. And we try to figure out where we fit in that. And I think that's what a lot of people experience in their teen years, their early 20s, trying to figure out, where do I fit? And how much like other people should I be, and how distinct should I be?
Yeah.
And what are the consequences for both?
Yeah.
And then maybe sometimes it takes as long into the 30s for a person to actually come to, okay, this is me.
Right.
For better or worse, this is me. And I like me, or I have some work to do to get to like me.
Yeah.
And now it's a matter of, can other people accept me?
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to keep trying to be the chameleon. I'm not going to keep trying to do origami with myself to get into the spot that I perfectly fit in with everybody. No, I'm going to show up as I am and allow others to kind of do what they have to do in order to either get along with me or stay away from me. And not in a confrontational kind of way, but just more of a I'm
healthy
solid
filter. Yeah.
I'm solid now. And as we do that, man, we start putting stuff down. Putting down fears that were passed down for generations, putting down concerns about how we're supposed to act. You talked about, there's the demand for success. You know what? I can be successful in a lot of different ways. And just because I haven't hit the mark yet, I didn't have the successful marriage. I didn't have the initial academic success that I wanted. Doesn't mean that I got to stop. It means I need to recalibrate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that recalibration is key.
Yep.
Now,
Absolutely.
if people want to keep up with you, they want to
Yeah.
follow you, if they want to reach out to you professionally,
Mm-hmm.
how should they go about doing it?
So I do have an Instagram coachathon.
Okay.
It's the coaching business. Right now, they could email me at ipnindersingh@gmail. You're welcome to email as
Link
well.
in the description.
Right. I think those are probably the best two ways right now. As I continue to develop my, professional journey, we are, seeing what I could do with either couples or IFS or EMDR, and that's wonderful. But this deeper part of this kind of the skills and the energy we have, that's always there. That doesn't go away, right? This is what I'm doing for life. This is my life's profession now, beyond any official titles or degrees or whatever. Sure, that formal training is nice, but there's something a lot deeper, I think, that we're starting to talk about here. So
most definitely.
Thank you. Yeah.
Now, I happen to be linked in with you. Would you mind if I share that information and link in the description?
Oh yeah, that's fine.
Put that in the description as well. Do you have a Psychology Today or anything like that?
Not yet.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
If by chance he puts one together before I release this, I promise you the link's going to be in the description. Just check out the description for any ways to try to connect. I thank you so much for letting me come to your beautiful home, on your beautiful rooftop on this beautiful day. Thank you so much for sharing the things that you shared about yourself, culture, and also the work that's ahead. I'm excited for you to be joining the field in every capacity that you can and reaching into people's lives the way that you can, because the more that we have options for people who want to work on different aspects of their wellness, the more that I think our field is going to actually have the outcome that it's hoping for. We move away from just, as you said, labeling and diagnosing to, hey, how do I help you be you?
Yeah.
And whatever challenges you got going on, overcome those challenges. And that's part of the reason why I'm doing this series, man. I want to showcase people. I want to highlight that there are many different paths to the same point. And I also want to highlight that there are many different ways that people can branch out.
Yeah.
We don't have to see wellness as being this one-way street, or that therapy alone is the gatekeeper for how to be well.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
It can be multifaceted. So I turn my attention to you now, the viewer. I thank you for yet again watching an episode. If you haven't already, click like, share, and subscribe. You also probably want to keep an eye out for that notification bell to let you know when the next one drops. We've really enjoyed our series so far, and I'm looking forward to the future interviews. But today we got to sit with an amazing guy with an amazing beard. I told him we took a little break because I wasn't sure if his beard and the mic were getting along well, but I was like, look, your beard is so beautiful and soft that it just gracefully, gently guides itself over the mic without causing any disturbance. So I hope you enjoyed the interview, and
thank you, Johnny, so much. A lot of thanks to you for doing this. This is amazing that you've created this space. It really is. I hope you give yourself just as much credit, because it's really wonderful that you're doing this. Thank you so much.
Well, hey, this is a part of my self-investment too, man. I want to be the best version of myself possible, so I want to connect myself with the best village I can. So I appreciate you being a part of it, man.
Thank you so much.
And I say to you, be well.